The Indiana Fever have made a roster cut.
So the Indiana Fever have one roster spot left, and they have got 5 players for the roster spot.
The Indiana Fever just made some wild moves, and no, they're not signing a new mascot. They've literally fired some of their best players. Why? Oh, just making sure Caitlin Clark grabs a championship, obviously.
So the Indiana Fever, as expected, have waived Yvonne Ejim. I mean, it's kind of assumed that Michaela Timpson is a lock for the roster spot, but they did keep Jaylen Brown, so that does make me wonder, like, why not cut Jaylen Brown in this round if she still wasn't in consideration? So Ejim had some pretty tough minutes against the Mystics, and she did have some moments in the Brazil game, but I think just her overall kind of like knowledge of leveling up isn't exactly there yet.
But is this genius strategy or a total dumpster fire waiting to happen? Stick around, because we're about to dive into what could be the most dramatic plot twist in WNBA history. Trust me, you won't believe what's really going on here.
Do have some not so great news, and that was just announced today that the Fever have made 2 cuts after the first week of camp. 3rd round pick Bree Hall and free agent signing Jillian Elaine. The roster now stands at 13. They need to get down to 11 for salary cap purposes by May 15th. And this is the sad part about the WNBA. Even if you are drafted to a team, that does not guarantee you a roster spot. The WNBA does not have a league like the NBA has with the G League, where they can assign players to the G League. They can flip back and forth between G League and playing in the NBA.
The Indiana Fever, the team that somehow managed to become both a hot mess and a fan favorite, recently made a series of cuts to their roster that have left the basketball world scratching their heads in confusion, mixed with a healthy dose of what were they thinking. If you're wondering who stayed and who was shown the door, let's just say the Fever's latest moves have all the finesse of a toddler trying to play chess. Awkward, misguided, but somehow still memorable.
We are required, based on salary cap restrictions, to cut it down to final 11 players. And unfortunately for these 2, Bree Hall, thank you, but your services are no longer required. And Jillian Elaine, we appreciate you for coming out.
First off, let's talk about the cuts. For a team that's been notoriously bad for years, they made the kind of moves that you'd expect from someone who had just been handed a bag of broken crayons and a coloring book. The decisions are questionable, to say the least. One can only imagine the front office sitting around, sipping their lattes, and trying to figure out what to do with a roster that's been more chaotic than a high school talent show. So they did what any confident organization would do. They threw a few players out the door without much thought, clearly prioritizing Caitlin Clark's future over everything else.
So the Fever made some unsurprising, but of course always still sad roster cuts today, because you want to see everybody get an opportunity, and the cold reality of the WNBA is there just aren't that many teams.
Caitlin Clark, the beacon of hope for a franchise that's been plummeting like a rock tied to a balloon. You'd think she was the only player left on the roster at this point, considering how much of the spotlight she's soaking up. It's as if the Fever front office looked around, saw that they were a disaster, and decided to toss the entire roster into the trash. Except for Caitlin, of course, who they've clearly decided is the only player who matters. The other players? Well, they're just lucky to be in the same general vicinity as Caitlin.
At all. Now the Fever make these cuts, and again, they're not surprising ones, just because I think most of us expected when Jillian Elaine signed a training camp contract, she would not be making the team. She got a few minutes in the exhibition game, didn't particularly stand out. Had some decent production from a box score standpoint. She didn't play in the first preseason game, but she was released or waived.
If you're enjoying, please subscribe. The front office moves have been as smooth as a wrecking ball crashing through a window. Let's not forget that the Fever are sitting near the bottom of the WNBA standings, so cutting players seems like a move that should come with a disclaimer. We may or may not know what we're doing, but hey, look at Caitlin Clark. Honestly, if you didn't know better, you'd think the Fever were doing everything possible to ensure that Clark's path to a championship was as clear as a freshly waxed gym floor. But hey, let's break down some of the roster moves. Who stayed, you ask? Well, there's Caitlin Clark, of course, because if you didn't think she was going to be the center of the team's universe, then clearly you've missed the memo that the Fever's entire strategy involves giving her the ball, stepping back, and hoping for a miracle. The rest? Not so lucky. There's a lot of talent on this team that's been shown the door. And what are they left with? A few players who are clearly just there to hold down the fort while Clark pulls off another highlight reel play.
No! Gamecock fans, Bree Hall fans, I have some terrible breaking news. Looks like the Indiana Fever have officially waived Bree Hall. Indiana Fever also waived Jillian Aileen, who was given a training camp contract. She was actually drafted in 2016 in the second round. We all saw that Bree Hall played in the...
Now, if we take a moment to think about the cuts, it's easy to see what's going on here. The Fever front office, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that if they can't build a well-rounded team, they might as well just hand the keys to Clark and let her drive this mess to wherever it's supposed to go. It's almost as if they took one look at the roster and said, you know what? Let's just keep the one player who actually has a chance at carrying us out of this dumpster fire and cut the rest. They were never really needed anyway. But the moves aren't just about cutting players. Oh no, the Fever are also making sure that Caitlin Clark gets every opportunity to shine like the star she's destined to be. The cuts? Well, they're more like reassignments. Because apparently the Fever front office has decided that the team doesn't need more than one person who can actually contribute. So everyone else is either getting dumped into the abyss of maybe we'll find a spot for you next season, or in some cases, you're just lucky we haven't given you the boot yet.
But I'm not seeing Bree Turner being the Bree Turner that I wanted her to be. And Bree Turner is a rim runner, so we all kind of thought that she was a lock. And she was in that gym practicing every day with the Indiana Fever, which was a good sign. But Michaela Timpson is also a rim runner and kind of feeling that she could come in for Howard. Like once, Howard can mentor her, and Howard really likes Michaela Timpson.
And, as frustrating as it is to see the Fever essentially throw their roster into chaos, there's something oddly poetic about the whole situation. It's like they've decided to build their entire team around one player who is, let's face it, the only reason anyone even remembers they exist. Caitlin Clark is their golden ticket, and they're betting everything on her. You almost have to admire the gall of it all. The Fever's strategy seems to be, why bother with a full team when we can just throw all our chips on Clark and pray that she turns into a one-woman wrecking crew? But hey, if you think about it, what else is there to do? The Fever haven't exactly been a shining beacon of success in the WNBA. At this point, cutting players who aren't living up to the hype only makes sense. Why carry extra baggage when you've got the one player who can do it all, or at least make it look like she can? The Fever are basically saying, look, we can't win with a team, but maybe we can with Caitlin. Fingers crossed, right?
There's some sad news. Yvonne Ejim got cut today. She got cut today. I just saw the newspaper clipping online, and I feel bad for her. I thought she did really well, put a lot of effort. I hope some team pick her up, but she's gone.
As for the players who were shown the door, you have to feel for them. Sure, they probably weren't the ones putting up the big numbers, but getting cut by a team like the Fever has to sting. I mean, when you're told you're just not good enough for us, and the team's still a train wreck, you start to wonder what the point of it all was. What, am I supposed to leave now and try to find a better team? But who's hiring right now? Besides, everyone who's not the Fever. One can only assume that the players left behind in the wake of these cuts are sitting around, staring at each other and wondering how much longer they have before they're given the same treatment. They've got to be thinking, okay, so Caitlin Clark's got this, but what do we do now? It's almost like they're all part of a weird unspoken support group for the basketball team's last-ditch efforts to pretend like they're actually contending for something more than just a good time.
In a sense, that's humorous, I guess, but the reality of it isn't funny because somebody isn't making a team, isn't realizing their dreams right now, and that in the form of Ejim. Now, it doesn't mean the end of your WNBA tenure. So
there's an undeniable sense of irony here. The Fever are cutting players to make room for Clark, but let's be real. It's not like anyone else on that roster was out there making waves. The team seems to be in this perpetual state of pretending they're a contender, but it's become painfully obvious that they're far from it. You almost want to send the Fever a thank you card for making it so clear that they have absolutely no idea how to rebuild a team. Maybe something with a note that says, thanks for the honesty. It's nice to see a team so committed to staying in the dark about what it takes to win. The way they're going about it is almost comical. They've decided that cutting players, some of whom could probably be decent in another system, is the best way to clear space for Clark. But let's be real here. It's not like they're cutting any stars to make room for her. It's like trimming the edges of a dried out bush in hopes that a miracle will suddenly make it bloom.
I am surprised that they cut Bree Hall so quickly. I thought they would give this a real opportunity, a real shot, but it appears that they figured out that they don't want Bree Hall, which again will always make me question, why the hell did you even draft her? The only reason I thought of what I thought of and I said what I said was because it made no sense otherwise to draft her when there was a clear need for a backup point guard.
The Fever aren't exactly swimming in talent. They're just keeping Clark around, making sure she's got everything she needs, and hoping that the basketball gods will shine down on them for the first time in years. The coaching staff probably prays every night that some kind of divine intervention will happen, because at this point, that's their only shot at actually becoming relevant again. Who knows? Maybe Clark will be the miracle they need, but it's hard to shake the feeling that they're just wasting time trying to polish a team that's been a dumpster fire for far too long. But hey, at least they're trying, right? In the grand scheme of things, it's not just about Caitlin Clark. Oh no, it's so much bigger than that. For the Fever, this is more than a game. It's about holding on to even the faintest shred of hope. Clark represents their last best chance to salvage a future that, frankly, doesn't look all that bright. If she doesn't pan out, well, that's pretty much it for them. It's like they've thrown all their chips into a single high-stakes bet and are now praying for a miracle.
I like her a lot, but the person that may be cut may be a player that's trying to make a roster but just can't. It may be Brown. It might be Brown. I think she's going to get cut. So that's my prediction for the cuts. I wish we could keep them all, but that's the nature of the business. That's why expansion of WNBA would actually help the league, because these situations, I just hope the league gets more popular so these women can fulfill their dreams. But actually,
if Clark doesn't deliver, then the team's going to be left grasping at straws, and that's just a sad reality they'll have to face. But hey, let's give credit where it's due. At least they've made it abundantly clear who their star is. Caitlin Clark is the beacon of light in an otherwise murky future, and if you're a fan of the Fever, you'd better hope she shines bright. As for the rest of the team, well, I guess they'll just have to settle for playing in Clark's shadow for the foreseeable future. Not exactly the glamorous life, but someone has to do it. They might not get the spotlight, but without them, Clark wouldn't have a stage to perform on. It's a tough gig, no doubt. They're stuck in a supporting role with no real promises of recognition. But hey, that's the price of playing second fiddle. Maybe they'll find a way to thrive in the background, but right now, it's all eyes on Clark, and the rest of the Fever are just along for the ride. So, what's next for the Fever? Well, given their track record of questionable decisions, there's a very real chance they'll keep cutting players who somehow don't fit into their chaotic, half-baked plans. After all, what's the point of building a balanced team when you can just roll with Caitlin Clark and friends for another season, right? The strategy where Clark is the star and everyone else is just a convenient backdrop for her brilliance.
They had until May 15th to cut these players. So yes, we want to be an upstanding organization. Yes, we want to treat these players fairly. I get all that. I get all that. Now hear me out. In these upcoming preseason games, wouldn't it be beneficial to have as many bodies on the bench so when it comes time to the fourth quarter, we're not playing anybody who's going to be an important part in our rotation? Especially given some of the freak actions that we've seen already this season, already this off season, already this preseason, already this training camp, all the freak injuries and actions we've already seen. I understand, but we need to protect ourselves as well. If we have until May 15th, right? We have until May 15th. We can continue to have these ladies on the roster, correct me if I'm wrong, and then just do one fell swoop all at one time.
Sure, it's not exactly a recipe for success, but who needs team chemistry when you've got one of the best players in the game? Honestly, the Fever's next moves are anyone's guess. Maybe they'll throw another random trade into the mix trying to build a team that can complement Clark. Or, and this would be so on brand for them, they'll just keep doing what they've been doing, focusing entirely on making sure Clark gets the ball, even if it means leaving everyone else to scramble for scraps. After all, who needs a cohesive roster when you can just pass the ball to your superstar and hope for the best? It's a bold strategy, one that's bound to keep fans on the edge of their seats, if only to see how long they can ride this one-woman show before the inevitable breakdown happens. But hey, at least it's good for the drama. The Fever are masters at keeping us entertained, even if it's just by virtue of watching their odd decisions and questionable tactics unfold in real time.
Cap for the Fever. The reality of it is they are most likely going to have to make another cut. Barring some unexpected maneuvering, they're going to have to make another cut. And it is most likely going to be Brown.
Maybe that's their real strategy, drama for the sake of drama, sprinkled with just enough hope that Clark can pull off a miracle. Who knows? In the world of the Fever, anything's possible. Just don't expect them to win many team awards along the way. And as we all watch this train wreck unfold, we'll be left to wonder how it's all going to play out. Will the Fever turn into a contender, or will they continue to make roster moves that only serve to confuse us all? Whatever the case, one thing is for sure. If Caitlin Clark doesn't get that championship, it's not going to be for lack of effort or complete lack of logic from the front office.